Welcome to the TJ Malden Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel.
What's up, everybody? So thankful that you're hanging out with me today. I have what I feel like is going to be a great episode for you today. Something that I thought about and chewed on, mulled over. Our staff has heard this already, even here at the church. But I want to lay the groundwork for you, kind of just where the heartbeat of this and where it came from. I went to an event in the last year, and at this event, there were what I would have considered some very high-capacity leaders, well-respected leaders, and they were bringing together younger leaders who were at an earlier stage in their profession, and essentially they were asking them to be a part of their leadership and their organization, and they wanted them on their team. And honestly, I got invited by a friend, so I was just hanging out. I was kind of observing, orbiting the event, watching everything go on. And what I realized as the event moved on, and this was like a 3 or 4 day getaway, I recognized that these guys who were in leadership were spending their time convincing these younger guys, convincing these other leaders to do what they wanted them to do. They were trying to convince them to be a part of their organization. They were trying to convince them of why their organization was superior and why it was worth being a part of. And personally, it is an organization that I'm partnered with personally. I love the organization. I love everything the organization does. But as I was watching this unfold, I was thinking, you're spending all of your time convincing these guys to be a part of what you're doing. And I think they would be a part of what you're doing if you would work more on connecting with them. Like really trying to connect with them, connect with who they are, connect with, who they are as a dad and a husband and a pastor and a leader and a businessman. But you're just trying to convince them. And then I just realized this. I was thinking, man, connection is so much greater than convincing. And it made me realize and think about all the times in my life that I've tried to convince people to do something. Like I've been really passionate about something. I've been really passionate about a new ministry, a new agenda, even a new direction here at our church. And so there's been times where I've been so guilty of this. I've tried to convince people to do what I wanted them to do or go where I wanted them to go, when really I should have just connected with their hearts and they would have gone with me. And so I put some time and thought into this. What does it mean to connect with someone rather than just convince them to do what I want them to do? And the first, I'm going to give you, I'm always going to give you some points. So today it's just going to be 5 points about connecting rather than convincing, or why connecting is so much greater than merely convincing someone to do. And the first one is this. I think you have to connect with people, to really lead them well, you have to be genuinely interested in who they are. Now, if you're convincing someone to do what you want them to do, and I've watched this happen, I've seen this in leadership, someone has a certain skill set or they have a certain level of affluence. So these leaders will make a sales pitch, or they'll try to get this person that has this certain talent on their team because they want the talent or they want the resources they provide rather than wanting the person. And I'm like, man, you would go so much further as a leader, and people would feel so much more apart and wanted if you would connect with the person. You have to be genuinely interested in the person. So if you want to use people as a means to an end, then convince them to do what you want to do. But if you want to lead people and you want to really connect with them, begin to be genuinely interested in who they are. So that's in the person, in their purpose, and in their future. And I've seen this on our staff even shift. Like I deeply care about the staff that God has gifted me here at First Baptist, and I like them. I'm genuinely interested in them. I care about who they are as people, their hobbies, like what they're into. I want to know what their purpose is. Even if this has happened before on staff, I'll tell you about this. There's been time that I've seen a staff member doing something that really didn't light their fire. They weren't really interested in it in such a way that it gave them purpose, but they were doing a job because it was expected of them. And so through really getting to know them and asking, hey, what do you feel like your purpose is in God? What do you feel like your purpose is in the kingdom? I, as their leader, because I know who they are as a person and what they're interested in, what they feel like their purpose is, I've been able to shift some of their job description so that they can do things that they feel deep purpose and meaning in that helps secure their future and them being even employed at our church for a longer period of time than they may have even anticipated. And so connecting matters. If I was just trying to convince them to do a job, the job will get done, but it might not be something they're super passionate about. So I want to be genuinely interested in someone's life. If you want to connect, hear me say this, if you want to connect with the people that you are tasked to lead, be genuinely interested in who they are, not just what you can get from them. Mark 6:34 says, when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began healing them and teaching them many things. And this is what I think, like Jesus knew the hearts of the crowd before he started administering healing and even education. Like he looked on the crowd, and obviously Jesus knew where they were. He knew what they were going through, but he felt something for them. Like he pulls up on shore, he sees the crowd, and he has compassion on them because he knew where they were at in life. And I feel like a lot of leaders fail. And I have failed. I'll just speak for myself. I have failed at times not knowing where people that I'm tasked to lead are, what they're feeling, what they're going through. I've focused on the task. At times, I've focused on winning before I've focused on the person. And so I think to really win in leadership, I've seen my leadership grow and flourish when I really work on knowing my people and begin to be genuinely interested in their lives and their passions and their desire. And I love the Simon Sinek quote. It says, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And so my encouragement today, and this is, I mean, gosh, hear me say it this way. This is applicable to the little league coach of a bunch of 10-year-olds. Like, I know you really want them to catch the ball and to hit the ball, and you want to win, and you want to get that fake little ring they give you at the end of a travel ball weekend that, is going to be piled in a drawer one day. But like, what really matters is for you knowing the people that you're leading, caring about them, learning about their passions and their desires, and that will build connection. And that connection will lead to, point number 2 today would be a partnership. Like, to be a great leader, I think you have to get the idea that this is an us thing and not an I thing. I'm taking us somewhere. I'm leading us somewhere. I'm creating something. It's realizing, like Romans 12:4-5, where Paul's talking. He says, for as one body, we have many members. And essentially, he said, just to paraphrase it for you, he says, we're like a body. Like, everybody's not going to be a hand. Everybody's not going to be a foot. Like we're all many different kind of members, and we all have our own function, and we're all useful in our function. This is what the body of Christ is like. It's the same way with a team. Like, yes, you may be in a place of leadership. You may be in a position to where you are tasked to take people somewhere, go on a journey, write this plan, sell this house, whatever it is in your work, your hobbies, or your family. But ultimately, it's going to work best in partnership. If you connect with people and you give other people purpose, you give other people a part of the journey and a part of the success, you will begin to build a real team rather than just telling someone what to do. And so for me, that's something I check myself on often. Like, I'm the pastor at First Baptist Tifton. The buck stops with me, right? Like, right, wrong, or indifferent. Like, I'm typically going to be the one that gets sometimes the credit or sometimes the blame when it's neither. Well, I don't deserve either one of them. Okay. And so I want to make sure that, like, I'm in partnership with my team. Like, this is an us thing. I'm deferring honor to them. I'm lifting them up. I'm adding value to their life, because we're partners in this great task of the gospel. So on your team, like don't make it about you. Don't let the I win. Make sure it's an us thing over an I thing. And I love the way Henry Ford said it. He said, coming together is the beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is the success. Like, working together is a success. Being on this journey together is the success. And as a leader, that means that you have to see every single person as mission critical. I've said this to our staff so many times, but I genuinely believe that does not matter what position you hold in our church, your effort, your work, your energy, from the facilities crew that makes sure the parking lot is in order and the trash is taken out, to the guy that mixes the sound on Sunday morning, the person that runs the lights, the person sitting in the office that makes sure that our electric bill gets paid every month. Every single person is mission critical. It's an us thing. So you know what I really believe? And this is what, for leaders, I think this is what is hard to translate sometimes, but I really believe this, that when that person clicked the pay the bill on the electric bill and the electricity got paid at the church and allowed us to continue to function, they were as much a part of our win as the person that set up the event, that sent out the invites, that made sure everybody was here, and that stood on the stage and did a great presentation. The person that preached the gospel, the person that sang the song. I am convinced that the person that cleaned the parking lot has as much credit in the win as the person that dreamed up the event. It's every person in an organization is mission critical. So it's all about the partnership. But if I'm just trying to convince people to do what I want, then I'll see these people as a means to an end that I've been gifted to lead, rather than people to partner with for the sake of the gospel. And so I want to be genuinely interested. If you're a leader, you want to be genuinely interested in the people that have been gifted to you. Then you want to partner with them and help them see that it's not just an I thing, but this is a we thing. This is an us thing. Like, we are doing something together, and every single person here is mission critical. And the third one is this: if I want to do that, I have to build trust. Avoid the mistake. And I heard a leader say this one time. They stepped out of a very successful, influential, I don't know any other way to say it, that just a very glamorous experience in their leadership, where they had thousands and thousands and thousands of people following them. And they stepped into a smaller venue, and this is what the person said: I thought that I could just do what I had always done because of who I am, and people would follow me. That's what they said. They said, I thought, because basically from where I came from and all the success that I'd had before, I thought that I could just make suggestions and I could change things and people would just go with me. When he said that, I realized, I was like, man, you didn't take the time to build trust. I've been here before. I've made this mistake, right? I've said it before, I think, in my sermons, but like you know, when you tell your kid, hey, do so-and-so, and they're like, why? And you're like, well, because I'm your dad. Like, you just do what I tell you to do. Rather than building trust, unpacking the why. Sometimes as leaders, we make the mistake of thinking that our talent, our intellect, or our position is enough, when really we need to spend our time investing in people and building trust, so that we don't have to shame people in going where we want to go, or pull that card of, if you were more godly, or if you trusted me more, or if you were a better believer, if you had more faith, you would go with me. Like, no. As a leader, it's your responsibility and my responsibility to spend time with people so that they know us and trust us, so much so that when we say, hey, let's take a left, they say, hey, you know what? Like, that dude or that woman has protected me. They've cared for me. They listen to me. They know me. And they're partnered with me in ministry. If they want to go left, it's because they're trying to take care of us and they're trying to take us somewhere good. People only believe that if you've built trust, if you've taken the time to do life with them and build trust. So you want to be, as a leader, you want to be genuinely interested in people. You want to build collective, real partnership where every person is mission critical. And then you want to take time to build trust. I would argue this: the more successful you are and the busier you get, and you can parse out how you feel about success. The busier you get, the more successful you get, the more wins that you and your team begin to amass, this gets more and more difficult. You have to be incredibly intentional about carving out time, even if it's 20 minutes here, an hour here, reconnect with your team. Right? This is something that, even for me, I'm in a season of life where I've probably said yes to too many things, and I'm kind of navigating my schedule. I'm navigating my life. I'm looking at some of the committees that I'm on, some of the meetings that I'm a part of, and I'm saying, okay, what area of my life is mission critical for the glory of God in my life, for the glory of God in my family, for the glory of God in my church and my team. And then all of these organizations, they kind of come after that. And so I've circled back even with some of my team members of saying, hey, like, man, I want to get coffee. I want to get lunch, whatever it is. I want to carve out some time so I can make sure that I'm building trust with people that I actually do love, like I actually care about. It's kind of like this. Anytime my wife and I get an opportunity to get out of town and it's just me and her, we go to dinner or we get to go on vacation, spend 2 or 3 days, and it's just us and we have great friends that take care of our kids. Usually our kids camp with Lindley, the producer of the podcast, that they love on our kids and take care of our kids. But when Tay and I get away, it's almost like we have conversations that we don't get to have, obviously, in the busyness and craziness of life and the kids, and we're doing lunches and all these things. And there's this reconnection, even in our marriage, just to Paul. And I realize, I've said this to her, I was like, in these moments, I'm reminded that I really would, like, everything else in this world, I could lose my job, I could lose my team, like it'd break my heart. But like as long as I got my bride and my kids, I'm like, I'm good. Like I'll be all right. Like we'll figure something out, Like I'll sell tomatoes on the street corner. I don't know, I'll figure something out, in life when it comes to a job. It's the same way with my team. Like I've been invited into some cool circles with some really influential people, some of the greatest leaders in our country. And especially in the evangelical world, in the Christian world, in church world. And I've been in these meetings, and like when I get home and I'm with my team and I'm hanging out with them, I'm like, I would still pick you over them. You know what I mean? Like I would pick my team over all these other people, these famous people, these blah, 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 whatever. Like that only comes from being genuinely interested, partnering with them in ministry, and then building trust, like living life with your team. And that's something that I've had to even remind myself of. The busier that I've gotten, I have to carve out time so that I can build trust with my team. George Washington, there were some, I've read some excerpts from letters that he wrote, and that some of his surgeons that were even on the battlefield and with them in the army wrote between 1777 and 1778, the winter at Valley Forge. And George Washington had the opportunity to leave his army. And many of you have read this in the history books where they didn't, they didn't have enough food, their clothing. There's a bunch of letters of young soldiers asking their families to send more shirts or to send shoes, and even to send shoes for their friends. And they were, understaffed. They were underprovided for, like all these things. It was just very feudal rations even for food. And George Washington stayed with his regiment rather than. Who's a general, right? Like he had the opportunity to go and get better provisions, to stay in a warm place, to have better clothing, and instead he stayed with his men. And a lot of historians say that endeared him to them in such a way that they would go wherever he said go, they would do whatever he said do. He built trust. He let them see that they weren't just men to serve his purpose on the battlefield, but they were people that he cared about, that he would do life with. And so as a leader, I don't care what organization you're leading, or even in the blessing and beauty of leading your family, like take time to build trust, take time to spend time and carve out time to make sure that you're able to build trust. And then, and this is, I'll say then you get to the careful critiques. I was at this event that I told you about earlier, and I was listening to these guys, right, who were very successful in their field, and they were trying to get these younger guys, influential guys, a part of this big thing that they were doing. And I didn't hear them really try to connect with their hearts very much. There was a lot of convincing going on, but there wasn't much connection. They weren't picking their brains about their families or about their current leadership roles, or what their passions were. And then all of a sudden there was this moment where I listened to these really successful guys who were from a place of great influence begin to tell these other guys the things that they were doing wrong. And I was like, I don't think this is what you want to do. Like, I don't think this is the path to go down, guys. Like, abort, like, right, back up. And I'm watching, I'm not saying anything. I'm just watching this unfold. And I'm like, you haven't taken the time to get to know them. You don't seem genuinely interested. They don't feel like they're a part of what you're doing, but you're kind of picking them apart, and you're giving them these critiques, and you're just telling them how to run the ship from your perspective. And I thought, man, these aren't very careful critiques because they don't feel connected to you. So what it feels like is that you're just telling them what to do. Like it almost seems egocentric of, I know better than you know, so just listen to what I have to say. And so leaders at times, your critiques, if they aren't careful, can be resented by the people that you're leading because you didn't take the time to build trust. You didn't take time to over-accentuate, like, we are partners, and you're not genuinely interested. So when you critique them, you just sound like a complainer. You just sound like you're minimizing their job. You're one, maybe even assaulting their intellect of them feeling like, okay, this person thinks I'm dumb and I can't figure out how to do my job, rather than a careful critique. Scripture says in Proverbs 27:6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Like, faithful are the wounds of a friend. If you develop friendship, if you develop closeness and partnership, and you build trust, and you're genuinely interested, when you begin to bring critiques, they might not like it, they might not agree with it, they might not even do it, but at some point they have to question this. Wait, this person that God has put in leadership in my life, they love me, they care about me, and they like me, and they're critiquing me. So I'm going to have to face the critique at some point, right? I'm going to have to face the criticism, and I know it's not just because they're picking me apart. It's because they care about me winning. They care about me succeeding. They care about me growing. A careful critique does that. Otherwise, you're just seen as a wrongful critic, right? And I love, this is an anonymous quote, but I wanted to give it to you. The right to criticize must be earned, even if the criticism is right. And that was another observation that weekend that I was spending with all these guys. Some of the things they were saying, they were accurate. But because they had not developed relationships with these other guys, because they had not invested in their lives, it sounded like, I'm successful, I've done this before, just do what I've done or listen to what I'm saying and you'll be fine, rather than, no, like I want to bring you along in this journey. I want to educate you and teach you. So you want to be genuinely interested. You want to develop real partnership. You want to build trust. You want your critiques to be careful. You want to make sure that you've earned the right to critique someone. And then I would say this might be the most important one. This paves the way for this to be a circular thing, right? Continued support. Because your team is going to fail you. They're going to let you down. You're going to fail you, and you're going to let yourself down. But your team is going to make mistakes. They're going to blow it, right? They're going to train wreck something at some point. And I'll say this: if you're not genuinely interested in your team, if you haven't developed good partnership with them, if you haven't spent the time to know them and build trust, and you haven't given them careful critique on the way, when they make a mistake, you will be tempted to terminate them rather to endure life with them, help them grow, and then incorporate them back into ministry with you or back into the job or the role with you. You will be tempted to treat them as if, okay, they're just, well, this collateral damage, and like, move to the next person, hire the next person, get the next person on the team, scout out the next talent, rather than, no, I'm going to support you. I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to be genuinely interested in you. I'm going to partner in ministry and life with you, or whatever job or vocation or hobby you're doing. I'm going to build this trust. I'm going to make some critiques along the way that I really want you to care about and think about. And in those moments when you fail, I'm not going to abandon you. I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to invest. I'm going to correct. I'm going to, at times, this has been true in my leadership, I'm going to have to carry you. And you may have to carry me. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to lead you. And then I'm going to press repeat. And then I'm going to invest, and I'm going to care for you, and I'm going to teach you. And at times I'm going to have to carry you, and you might have to carry me. I'm going to love you. I'm going to lead you. And then I'm going to press repeat. If people are a means to an end, you will be lonely in your leadership. And you might even convince yourself in your own pride that you're such a great leader and so high in your leadership that leadership is just lonely at the top. I've heard that phrase before. It's ridiculous. No. Jesus was Jesus was the greatest leader of all time, right? And there were always crowds and crowds of people around him. Why? Because he saw them. He landed on shore, and he knew where they were. He knew what they were going through, and he had compassion. Even his disciples, he knew how to speak to and treat them, and he spoke to them differently. He knew where they were. He knew their family members. He had friends. And there were always a group. The greatest leader of all time was surrounded by people. His life was not lonely on earth in many terms. Why? Because he invested. He spent time. He cared. He carried literally us into the kingdom of God. Scripture says that he conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love. Like he carried us through salvation into the kingdom, but he took time to teach them and to love them, to rebuke them, to correct them. And then he just pressed repeat. And so today, my heart for you, if you're in any position of leadership or even just in a relationship, and I don't care what job you have, you're always going to have the opportunity to lead something. You're going to have the opportunity to take care of people or to do life with people. And if you don't get anything else out of this podcast, it's this idea that you can either spend your time convincing people of who you are and who you should be or who they should be or what they should do or what you could do, or you can spend your time connecting. If you really want to lead people, at some point you have to connect with them. So be genuinely interested. Partner with them. Lose the I and pick up the us. Begin to build trust. Carve out some time to invest in people that you care about. Administer correct critiques and careful critiques when you need to. And ultimately, just keep pressing repeat. Continue that support. And I believe if you could apply even a few of these things, you would be amazed at the difference this will make for you relationally and organizationally. So like I always say, listen, if you have questions, I always appreciate you hanging out with me. But if you have questions, if you want to talk more about this kind of stuff, you can always email us at tjmaldenleadershippodcast@gmail.com. If there's things that you want to think about, things that you want us to talk about, some topics that you want us to address, my heart is that you would grow in your life, in your leadership, and in the gospel. And a pathway to that, whether it's sharing Christ with someone or trying to lead someone in your business or in your company, you're trying to increase sales, whatever it is, connecting will always be greater than just convincing someone. Appreciate y'all hanging out. See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the TJ Malden Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel. If you enjoyed this episode, share with a friend. For more content, follow us on Instagram and YouTube. If you have any questions you would like to ask TJ, whether it is about life, leadership, or the gospel, you can email those to tjmaldenleadershippodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and we hope you join us again on the TJ Malden Leadership Podcast.